The silence began 3 days before anyone noticed. At first, it was subtle, small enough to be dismissed. Crickets stopped singing at night. Frogs vanished from the marshes near Miller Creek. Cows refused to enter certain fields, standing at the fence lines with their heads low, eyes fixed on the sky. People joked about it. "Bad weather coming," they said. Something spooked the animals. But the weather never came. Instead, the stars began to change. Ethan Cole worked nights at the Harrow Falls water treatment plant, a concrete slab squatting beside the river like a forgotten bunker. He had always liked the quiet, liked the isolation, liked knowing that while everyone slept, he was keeping the town alive. On the night of October 14th, the machines began to misbehave. Pressure readings spiked for no reason. Filters clogged with thick black residue that smelled faintly metallic, like burnt wires and blood. When Ethan flushed the system, the water ran clear for exactly 12 seconds before darkening again. At 1:47 a.m., the river stopped flowing. Not froze, stopped. Ethan stepped outside, boots crunching on gravel, and stared at the water. The surface was perfectly still, no ripples, no current, no reflection of the moon. It looked solid. He threw a rock. The stone hit the surface and vanished without a splash. Ethan felt something watching him. He didn't stay to find out what. By October 16th, Harrow Falls felt sick. People complained of headaches, nosebleeds, and vivid nightmares involving tall figures standing at the foot of their beds. Children drew the same pictures in school without ever speaking to one another. Black skies, broken stars, long shapes reaching down. Phones lost signal randomly. GPS systems showed users standing miles underground were hovering above town. Birds flew into windows. One man swore the sun blinked. The town council scheduled an emergency meeting. Only half of them showed up. The rest were already gone. The night everything ended, Sarah Whitmore dreamed of her husband. He stood in their bedroom doorway, pale and trembling. "Don't look at the sky," he whispered. "They're already here." She woke to silence so complete it hurt her ears. The clock read 2:14 a.m. That was when the dogs began to whine. Sheriff Daniel Crow never believed in UFOs. He believed in drunk drivers, domestic disputes, and the slow decay of small towns. At 2:36 a.m., he received a call from a farmer on Old Ridge Road, panic-stricken, barely coherent. "There's something above the fields," the man cried. "It's bending the air." The call ended in screaming. Daniel drove out anyway. Fog swallowed the road. The headlights reflected off something massive above him. Not a ship, but a presence, blotting out the stars like a wound in the sky. His radio screamed. His cruiser died. And the thing looked back. At 3 a.m., every screen activated. The message was brief, cold, final. "Your species has been observed. Civilization threshold met. Harvest authorized." Some people prayed. Some laughed hysterically. Some ran into the streets, screaming at the sky. It didn't matter. They did not land. They manifested. Reality folded, and they stepped through. Tall, skeletal forms with skin like translucent parchment stretched over black, pulsing organs. their limbs bent too many times, their hands split into dozens of thin instruments that twitched constantly, tasting the air. They did not speak aloud. They edited minds. Victims froze as memories were stripped from them, childhoods erased, identities dissected, emotions cataloged like lab samples. Some humans collapsed, breathing but empty, their eyes glassy and unresponsive. Others were deemed inefficient. Those people were folded, compressed, reduced into twitching, screaming shapes that dissolved into ash and were siphoned upward in thin beams of pale light. The aliens did not rush. They were thorough. Sarah hid in her basement, clutching a shotgun she barely knew how to use. The pressure in her skull worsened, as if her thoughts were being rearranged. She saw flashes of impossible places, planets stripped bare, oceans drained, skeleton cities orbiting dead stars. When the alien appeared at the top of the stairs, she understood something terrible. They were not invaders. They were collectors. Her grief confused it. Her trauma corrupted its scan. For a moment, just a moment, it hesitated. She fired. The creature collapsed in a cascade of broken geometry and black fluid. Across town, every other alien turned toward her. They did not kill Sarah immediately. They studied her. The house was lifted gently from the ground, frozen in time. Walls peeled away. Her memories were replayed in the air. Her husband's death, her loneliness, her pain. Inside the alien consciousness, something shifted. Emotional complexity exceeds model. They changed tactics. Instead of harvesting Harrow Falls completely, they took most of it. They left the town standing, empty, a test environment. Sarah was returned to her basement, unconscious. When she woke, the sky was normal again. The town was gone. Sarah wandered empty streets for days. Cars sat abandoned with doors open. Food rotted on tables. Phones rang endlessly in empty houses. She found people, alive but hollow, staring at walls, unable to speak or recognize their own names. They all died within a week. Their bodies simply shut down. Sarah was the only one left. Years later, astronomers noticed something alarming. Stars were vanishing, not exploding, not collapsing, vanishing. Radio telescopes picked up repeating signals, coordinates embedded in cosmic noise. Earth, Harrow Falls, and a final note buried beneath layers of alien data. Species displays anomalous resilience. Study ongoing. Next harvest, planetary. Sarah still lives in the exclusion zone. Sometimes she hears them at night, not above her, inside her head, learning, waiting. The universe did not arrive suddenly. It had been leaning toward Harrow Falls for years. Long before the silence, before the stars dimmed, people in Harrow Falls had begun to change in ways no one could explain. Martha Hensley started carving symbols into her porch railing during sleep. Perfectly symmetrical shapes, circles intersected by branching lines, angles that hurt to look at too long. When asked why, she said she was remembering something she hadn't learned yet. The local radio station began broadcasting static between songs, static that, when slowed down, contained rhythmic pulses, not random, structured, like a heartbeat. Doctors noticed a spike in identical tumors forming at the base of patients' skulls, tiny thread-like growths wrapped around the brainstem. They were labeled benign. They were not. On October 12th, half the town shared the same dream. They stood in an open field beneath a blackened sky. Above them hovered shapes too vast to focus on, bending perspective itself. A soundless voice pressed into their minds. "You are being prepared." Children woke screaming. Adults woke crying without knowing why. Some people woke with blood on their sheets from biting through their tongues. One man never woke at all. His body was found upright in bed, eyes open, brain liquefied inside his skull, as if something had overwritten him and then abandoned the shell. Ethan returned to the water treatment plant the night before the harvest, unable to shake the feeling that he had missed something important. Inside the filtration tanks, the black residue had grown thicker. When viewed under a microscope, it wasn't oil or algae. It moved. Thin filaments twisted and recoiled from light. When exposed to electrical current, the filaments aligned, forming the same symbols Martha had carved into her porch. Ethan realized the water wasn't being contaminated. It was being seeded. Whatever was coming had been inside the town for months, maybe years. He tried to warn someone. No calls went through. The beings did not limit themselves to Harrow Falls. The town was a test. Across the globe, other small communities experienced similar silences. Remote villages, isolated islands, desert towns. Most disappeared entirely. Harrow Falls was different. Harrow Falls responded. After the invasion, Sarah began to remember things she never lived. She remembered standing on alien worlds beneath dying suns. She remembered cities built of bone and light. She remembered billions of voices screaming, not in pain, but in recognition. The aliens returned for her, not physically, but mentally. Every night, at exactly 2:14 a.m., her consciousness was pulled into a vast, cold mental structure, an archive larger than galaxies. There, she felt them examining her memories again and again. Her grief, her love, her refusal to break. Why did you resist? Why did you maintain self-awareness? Sarah didn't answer with words. She answered with emotion. And that frightened them. The truth came slowly. The aliens were not conquerors. They were preservationists. Their universe was dying. Entropy was accelerating. Stars burned out faster. Reality itself was unraveling. They harvested intelligent species, not for labor, but for complexity. Emotion, chaos, irrational thought. Humanity was valuable because it was unstable. Love, grief, faith, madness. These were not flaws. They were fuel. The beings attempted to erase Sarah. It did not work. Her mind fractured, but instead of collapsing, it expanded. Years of trauma had hardened her thoughts into something jagged and resistant. She began to see through their projections. She saw the fear beneath their precision. They did not understand suffering. They could not simulate it, and therefore they could not fully control it. In the ruins of Harrow Falls, something impossible happened. Other survivors began to awaken, not physically, mentally. Across the world, a small percentage of humans exposed to early seeding began to experience the same resistance Sarah had. Nightmares turned into clarity. Voices turned into maps. The aliens noticed. Contamination detected. Species exceeds expected variance. Harvest timelines accelerated. Billions were scheduled. The second arrival was not subtle. The sky tore open above the planet, revealing structures larger than moons, vast lattices of impossible geometry anchored in higher dimensions. Gravity failed. Oceans rose. Cities screamed. Human weapons were meaningless, but human minds were not. Sarah stood beneath the opening sky, screaming defiance into the void, not because she believed it would save her, but because rage itself mattered. And somewhere in the alien network, an error propagated. The aliens learned too late. Humanity could not be harvested cleanly. Pain made humans unpredictable. Love made them dangerous. Meaning made them contagious. By the time the beings attempted to disengage, Earth was already embedded in their system, infecting it with contradiction, emotion, and uncontrolled narrative. The universe shuddered, not from destruction, from change. Earth still exists. For now. The stars no longer dim, but they flicker. Something watches us still. Something wounded. Something afraid. And somewhere, deep in the quiet between thoughts, a familiar pressure begins to build. The silence is not gone. It is thinking.